There we go. All right. So I want to first begin by laying out some spiritual and philosophical concepts that will be the themes of our discussion today. And the element that we are going to be speaking about is the element of earth, the earth plane, hence walking the earth, your connection to Mother Earth. And this is the development and of the seen world. So I would just want to invite you to shift gears in this conversation of looking at this from the perspective of the earth and the five sensory world and how you interact with the five sensory world. And not that we don't bring the sacred, the spiritual into it, because there's nowhere where that is not, that is part of it. But looking at your relationship to the earth, your body, how you move in the world. And that's why I hence the lesson here is walking the earth. How do you walk the earth? Not just in terms of your relationship to nature, but in terms with how what is the essence of you, and what do people maybe say about you when you enter a room, like what is that essence? What do you exude? So I just want to open that up for you to consider that type of a relationship to what we're talking about today as far as the earth plane. Now, the interconnected relationship between you and the earth results, as I said, in the essence of how you actually walk the earth. And based on our connection to the earth plane is actually very intrinsic factor and feature that determines our identity, your identity. And I'm going to explain how that's connected. So you are connected to all of life. Every choice you make, every belief you hold influences everything for you as an individual and for all of us collectively. Therefore, what we know is that your world exists, the world you exist in, reflects your personal reality. So that's the first part, right? My own reality, your own reality is a reflection of what my whole interior dialogue is and how I relate to the world around me. Now that you take all of our individual realities and bring them all together, then that becomes our whole collective reality. So what we see outside of ourselves is a reflection collectively of all of us. So as you've heard many times, and maybe you've heard me say, when we change, our world changes. And so, how we change collectively is through our own personal relationship with ourself. And therefore, when that all is able to shift in a way that is living in more light and more love, then we see a different reflection outside of ourselves. So what is the essence of how you walk the earth? Just sit with that for a moment. What is the essence of that? Do you walk the earth in trepidation? Do you walk the earth with maybe, oh, when is the other shoe going to drop? Do you walk it with resistance? Do you walk it with love? Do you walk it with fear? Do you walk in peace? Just sit with that for a moment and just do a, just a quick evaluation of how, of what sense you get of how you move through the world. Now, everything in creation begins with a foundation. A baby begins in a womb. A painter has a canvas. A carpenter has a piece of wood. A potter has clay. Everything has a foundation. Creation begins in the foundation. So today what we're going to talk about is that foundation as it pertains to earth, not only just actually the earth, like Mother Earth herself, but all of what that represents for us. Okay. And so, there was a time when the primal roots of your collective memories were connected to the earth, the sky, the seasons, and the animals. And what I mean by that, we go back in in time and when people actually lived on the earth. And that there was a deep connection because that's how things were communicated. That's how information was received, is through the earth itself. And so over time, as we have built structures and we have evolved over time, it's like we have lost our sense. We have lost that, that connection to listening to the sounds of the earth, being able to smell different things. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this particular book, but I'm going to show this to you because this is a pretty incredible book. It's called Mutant Messenger, Down Under. And this book is a book about a woman who went to New Zealand, and what she did is she was able to spend time with the Aboriginal tribe there. And it was a thing that she had no idea that she was going to be doing, that they picked her up in a vehicle, they take her out, and she thinks she's going to be accepting some kind of, acknowledgement with them. And what ends up happening is, I don't want to give too much of away, but she ends up spending like close to 3 months out there with them. They take all of her clothing, all of her belongings, and they burn it. And so what they wanted to do, they called, and it's called Mutant Message because she is the mutant, okay? And she's bringing the message back to the people. And that's what that book is. The book is the message that they gave her through her journey through the bush in New Zealand. And it is amazing. It's an amazing book. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, what was shown in that book is the connection to the earth, is connection to our roots, to our ancestors. And, all of this, the earth symbolizes our roots, our origin, our ancestors, our family, our tribe. And these roots are the structure of the self. It's the structure of our identity development, the feeling whether we feel we belong here, do we have the right to take up space? And that's a huge thing because that's something that I know myself personally, that I have experienced and have worked through and continue to work through is, do I have the right to take up space? Do I have the right to be heard? Do I have the right to be seen? All of that has to do with our connection to our foundation. So those of us who grew up in foundations that felt that it was rocky and it wasn't completely solid, then that is, from that place is where the structure of the self is built upon. And so here we are, we come to different junctures in our life and we realize, life isn't going quite the way that I want it to. It's not feeling as good as I want it to feel. And we go and we want to make these changes in our life. And so where do we need to begin? Well, one of the places that we need to look at, the biggest place, is our foundation. What is our foundation? And can I change that foundation? And the answer is absolutely yes. We can totally rebuild the ground in which we were conditioned and domesticated to walk, and begin to walk that in a new way. So your inner child and your victim experiences shape the beliefs, emotions, and behaviors with your higher self in the earth. Your body is home to your spirit. How you feed and nourish and care for it, how you understand yourself, is learning to accept, love, and listen to your body. And all of this is connected to your relationship, to your foundation, and to the earth itself. And what's so fascinating is that, the earth, it nourishes us, it feeds us. I mean, that's how our food grows. That's how, the whole food chain operates. It all comes from the actual earth, from Mother Earth herself. And so when we lose connection to that, we actually lose connection to ourselves, and we become fragmented, we become separate. And so if we look at this collectively, it's like part of the pain and suffering of what we're experiencing is our disconnection from the mother. And how, like we're having this conversation today, and I didn't plan this, and yesterday we had Mother's Day. And to take it out of that literal place, to put it into the symbolic, it's like, yeah, how do we honor the mother and the mother within ourselves? Now, the instinct to survive is also an integral connection to the earth. Early memories tell us that survival was a full-time concern. Although life is quite different now, this primal instinct is activated when survival energies rise in our body, right? Like this all goes very deep for us. So this has a lot to do with the concept of fear, the wound of fear. What do you fear? And how does that activate your own survival instinct? This also is connected to, like, the voice for this would be, I matter. And where that comes from is the relationship to tribal power, whether we mattered or not. And tribal power, what I'm talking about when I say that, is our early experience of our family environment. That was our tribe. How was our tribe? Did we grow up in a family environment, our family of origin, our roots, where there was a level of self-worth or self-esteem that was wounded in some way? Because then that relates to how we then walk the earth, how we decide whether we matter or not, that we're important enough to find the love that we want, to have the abundance that is our birthright. All of that is connected. So, cultivating consciousness and power involves tapping into your higher self and recognizing how you influence the world, how we all influence the world. So aligning ourselves with Mother Earth, we actually can tap into a more profound sense of purpose and connection to all forms of life. And it's essential for us to cultivate consciousness and power by being mindful of our choices, our beliefs, our actions, how they impact the collective reality, not just for ourselves, but again, for the collective reality. So what I want to do is I want to invite you to share what is possibly coming up for you with what I just said. I did put some questions in the chat that, let me click on that and repost that for some of you that just came in. And so I'm curious to know, like, what is your relationship to the ties and the connection of Earth, your ancestors, your roots? I mean, we're here in this present time right now, but do you ever call forth the wisdom from your ancestors to help you? Ivy, you're shaking your head. Yes. Yeah.
I would say so, yeah. My family is, we practice shamanism. So our ancestral, I guess, past is very important and very prominent in our lifestyle. So I do call upon my grandparents a lot, who recently just passed. So I do ask for their guidance and their strength in a lot of the things that I feel I am lacking my own strength.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, I do it quite often. I ask advice from my mother and from my former husband who died, and he's actually truly helped me a lot. And I get real answers from him. I can tell by what's happening, at the moment. And yeah, I'm a firm believer of it. I really am. They're there. I always feel like they know probably more than I ever wanted them to know about what has happened. That's how I feel. And yeah, I think they're in tune all the time.
Nice.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
So when I've done a lot of ancestry, and when I look back at my ancestors that I know about, I see that they struggled a lot because they were immigrants. And my great-grandfather, as a child, lost a leg when he was hit by a streetcar, and he suffered through a lot of pain as an adult. So I see a lot of struggle and pain, and my grandfather was a very angry man. So the only thing that I remember that I relate to is that the man who lost his leg used to read Dickens to his boys, my grandfather and his brother. And that makes me feel very like I love him. But he took his own life because he couldn't stand the pain anymore. So, and my mother took her own life. So I feel a lot of pain from my ancestry. And it makes me really sad that they struggled so much. So I don't know that I get wisdom from that. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna share a quote with you.
Okay.
All of you. You are who your ancestors have been waiting for. How does that make you feel?
I think it's true, because I've worked very hard to become a better person and to be loving and kind, and to not carry forward into this generation the things that I got from my family. So yeah, I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's powerful. It's a powerful statement.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Heidi, unmute. You got to hit unmute.
So we are all a gift. That's what I get from that statement. It's like we are such a gift to this world. So my father was born in 1871, and when I came along, he was 73 years old. He wrote me a letter when I was 6 weeks old. I frequently read the letter, but I have his watch, and every morning I wind the watch, and it's like he's there at the table with me, waiting for the day to happen. Anyway, life is good.
Oh, thank
Life
you.
is good. We're here, right? How good is that?
It is good.
Yeah.
It can be good. Yeah.
Why shouldn't it be good?
Well, sometimes there's circumstances that make things difficult to be
Life
good.
can be a big shithole sometimes, but
Yep.
for the most part, it's whatever we do with that shithole that makes the difference.
And that is true. And
Yeah.
that is true.
Excuse my language.
That's all right.
I'll mute myself now.
That's okay. Anybody else want to comment?
Uh,
I
oh,
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I relate more with the feminine side of my family. The male side had problems, so there was a lack of confidence, I felt, and they struggled with becoming what they thought they should be. But I'm very connected to the feminine side. My grandmother and my mother, they both passed, and I have a daughter. And when she was born, I looked at her and I said, oh my God, she's been here before. And I could just feel that she was an old soul. So we connect with each other in this nonverbal way a great deal of the time. We experience things at the same time. So it's really kind of comforting to have that for me, to help me when I'm feeling, I'm kind of lost, but I look at them and think of them, and I feel whole again. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Leslie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, my dad had something that he had said once. I remember being at a party for my parents for their 50th anniversary, and I said, what was the best day of your life and what was the worst day of your life? And he was always a very positive man. in I would say the majority of times. And he said, I've never had a bad day. He said, I've had bad moments, but I've never had a whole bad day. And I always think of that when somebody says, this is the worst day I've ever had. This is the worst. And I remember the worst day I ever had. And I look back at it, and the morning was really good. It was not a bad day. It was a bad time of the day. And I try to live like that. I try to live by that saying. And I said, what was your best day? He says, it's today. He says, and tomorrow it'll be tomorrow. And I thought, I thought about that. It's a nice way to live.
Thank you, Leslie.
Mm.
So I have a question for all of you. How has your relationship with the earth impacted your identity and sense of belonging? How has your relationship with earth impacted your identity and sense of belonging?
I could answer that. I started doing things with the Sierra Club, and I used to lead wilderness trips into the High Sierra. We'd stay there for a week and then come back. And I always felt when I was there that I was at home. And I read that book that you talked about, what was it? Mutant Message. I loved that book. And I thought, oh my God, I would love to do that. I would love to just be out there without phones and TV and just learn to be with the earth. And when I'm out in nature, I feel like I'm at home. I feel grounded, and I love it.
Yeah, because in that book, one of the things that she mentioned was that they were actually able to smell water. Like they could smell where to get the water, because there was no then they had this certain way that they would dig for water.
Yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, I mean, the communication was mostly telepathic, because that's how in tune they were. That's how much that they were not, the sounds of the world were not louder than their own sound. And many of you who have worked with me and heard me talk about the sounds of the world, and I'm going to just repeat it because I know not everybody's heard it. But in the tradition of the Nagual, the indigenous tribe, the belief or the teachings is that the moment that you were born, that first breath, that first cry that you let out is the sound of your arrival onto this planet, onto this earth. And that is your sound, that is your original sound. But then from that point on, the sounds of the world become louder than our own sound. And so the journey is to get back to your original sound. And one of the only ways, one of the most powerful ways, most profound ways to get, I should say it like that, instead of saying blanket statements, is to get back to nature, to get back to your original sound.
Wow.
Sometimes even going out in nature and let out your sound, let out your cry, whatever that happens to be. That's powerful. And the more that, we're all born with a level of personal power. We all have our own personal power within us. And those sounds of the world then begin to distort our own personal power. And we lose our sense of self and our power in the world, and how we're able to navigate relationships and experience and that sort of thing. But going into nature can actually help you to call back that power that you have within you. Because it will reveal itself. The more that you are the more that you are, you go into nature and you acknowledge its presence, its reverence, the more that nature will speak to you. So the question, the name, they are the, what did I say? Was it the Nagual? I don't know if it was the Nagual. Was it the Nagual? I think that's what I said. Nagual. Mhm. That's it. And that's a powerful teaching. And that's how, that's how the self then begins to be formed. It forms from the sounds of the world. That becomes the construct of the self. So I'm going to ask that question again if somebody wants to be brave and
I do.
answer it. Go ahead, Maggie.
Yes, for me, getting into nature, I did some classes where we did sweat lodges, and we laid out on these rocks in a little river, and we were just we jumped in the water in the early morning when it was freezing. It was like we were just immersed in nature in this workshop. And I think that's when I started to get back into my body, because at a young age I left my body, and that nature helped me come back. And that's my goal, is to to just be so connected to me, to the physical, is connecting to the earth, I believe, I feel. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really,
Thank you, Maggie, for bringing that up. There's a documentary, and I think it's called Earthing. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. It's called Earthing, and it actually talks about how this gentleman, he was he's responsible for the whole, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's going to be in the same kind of field of what I'm talking about here. When it came to our cable TV and getting all of that, being able to do what we can do now with streaming and that sort of thing. And this was years ago. And, he was just one of those kind of wire guys that did wires for this company. And anyway, he ended up making millions of dollars, him discovering this whole thing of how to get the whole cable system working that we now use and take for granted because it's all over the place. And he ended up coming down with some pretty severe physical things. And what he discovered, because is that if I can ground these certain wires that I'm working with, then why can't I ground myself with Earth, because Earth has electromagnetic fields, and we're electrons and all that sort of thing. And so this whole documentary is on earthing, and it's really fascinating, and I think it's a really important thing to watch, because it really speaks to what is part of the disconnect for us, right? Is that we don't go barefooted. Burying ourselves in the dirt, that is actually a really powerful thing to do. And being out in nature, taking your shoes off and just, letting that connection happen. That is very healing for us, because the earth isn't we're actually, our body can tune itself to the earth, but we wear these big rubber shoes, these high heels, all this kind of stuff that we do. And I get it, but still it's so when do we take ourselves back to the mother? That is powerful. Anybody want to make a comment here? If not,
I looked up the name of that. It's the Earthing movie.
okay. The Earthing movie. Thanks,
Yeah.
Donna. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yes. Excellent. I love that. So Orion says, I'm going to take a big, long barefoot walk after this. So I was out at the lake with my running shoes on, and I stepped in some dog poop on Saturday. And so I get in the car and I'm like, what's that smell? That whole thing that we do. And I was actually on the way to the farmer's market. And so I was like, I got to take these shoes off. So I took them off and I went to the farmer's market, barefooted, and I walk barefooted, so my feet aren't that like tender. But what was so funny is that we ran into some people that I didn't know, but my partner, he knew, and they were chatting, and I can see them looking at me like, oh yeah, she's really, Mark's partner is like, she's going barefoot out in this big public thing. But it felt so good. It felt so good to be barefooted, just walking around that whole area of, just connecting. And it just made me think that I'm going to just do this more often, sometimes even out in public, if that's what I need to do, just to ground myself to the earth. And I have a pair of shoes that actually have copper on the bottom. They're really super thin, and they're called Earth Walkers that I just recently purchased. And they're also pretty cool for like even hiking. You can wear them and running. I don't know
have
if
a
I'm running,
question.
but go ahead, Heidi.
How many of you are barefoot right now? I'm just curious.
Yeah, there's okay, right on. Yep. Yeah. That's a great question. So here's kind of a deeper question here. Is this was one of the fifth questions that I put on there, is how does your inner child and victim experiences impact your ability to align with your higher self and walking the earth? And for some of us, like growing up in an environment where the earth was scary, the world was scary, little spiders and different stuff like that, like whatever it is that we grew up around, those influences determined also whether the earth was safe or not, whether life on the earth was safe or not. And I know we all have our own maybe phobias, or whether it's bees or whatever it is, but there's a that's something to consider there too, because our relationship to how we react to those things say a lot about our own fears. Go ahead.
How many of you made mud pies when you were growing up? Me?
Probably.
Was that not the best thing in the whole world, to take that dirt and make them? And then they'd sit on the table and they'd bake in the sun. That's the first connections, right, that we have with the earth when we're little, and we make mud pies. And how many children do that now? I bet very few.
Well, unless it's
They're
on
all
their
connected to
cell
the,
phone.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
But just go ahead, Carol.
as a child, I felt secure with my family. I didn't ever feel too much afraid. And my mom used to say I would take off all my clothes in the morning and go out in the front yard and dance on the lawn. I think I've always felt connected to the earth, but in a more like walking through the spirit, because it seems like they're there, right? And so we have a beautiful backyard that Rick and I sit in quite often. And it's just wonderful to connect to that. I don't ever feel like I'm a victim anymore. I used to, but I realized that my life has been a lot of experiences, but I've never made a mistake because I learned from my experience. And it just came at me and I just dealt with it, whatever it was. So I did read the book, The Mutant Messenger, long time ago. And I know there was some dispute about it. They were trying to discredit the author. I think her name was Marilyn. And Diane and I, my friend, she said, well, I don't know why they're doing that. I said, well, does it matter? What she experienced, whether it was true or not, was just an absolute joy for both of us. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm sure that has been experienced in this world. So let's just accept it for what it is. And we could move on from there. So, but my experience is more, I think, I walked through, I talked to the lizards and I talked to the hummingbirds. I know my neighbors probably think I'm crazy, but we have a lot of life here on the ground. So I just enjoy that.
Mm. Nice. Yeah, thank you.
I think one of the happiest times, some of the happiest times in my childhood were when we would go to the seashore. And I used to love to dig up sand crabs, and I never hurt them. You just dig them up, and then I would hold them and they'd kind of move around, and then you put them back in the sand and then they burrow down and you could see the little air bubbles coming up, and then I dig them up again. And then I used to like to go around and collect the jellyfish that were beached and put them in a bucket that made them invisible. And I just loved the ocean and the smell, because in the Atlantic Ocean, you can go out forever and it doesn't get deep. It's very shallow. And I tried to take my son there and he refused to go out onto the beach with me. He just wouldn't go for it. And I was so disappointed because I wanted him to experience that joy that I felt. Although he did become a backpacker. So I got him to do the backpacking that I did, which was nice.
Have you guys heard the ocean referred to as the great healer? Yeah. That's how I was introduced to the ocean by my mother. She says it was the healer. The ocean was the healer. She didn't say the great healer, but she said the healer. And so I grew up believing, and still do, that the ocean, if you had a cut, whatever you had, just go into the ocean and it would be healed. Which I thought was powerful. So does anybody else want to comment on that inner child, those experiences early on, of how that possibly has shaped your relationship to nature today? In either a positive way, in a not so positive way? Or maybe how you have taken a conscious effort to make that different? So I'll give you an example. Orion says my connection is bad, but I was mostly barefoot until I was 6. Yeah. Oh, you go up out in the country. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
I can try, but I'm not sure how good my connection is. Am I stable?
Yep, you're stable.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I grew up out in the country. We lived near grape vineyards and plum trees and the Kaweah River. And I was barefoot until I was 6. And then I was barefoot every single summer after that until I was basically an adult. And I love being barefoot. I just sort of intuitively knew that I liked it, but now I'm learning more about why I like it for both scientific and spiritual reasons.
Yeah, beautiful. You know, what just came to mind is that, so I was thinking about, I just looked over at Michelle, and, Michelle has spent a lot of time in Egypt here in the recent past. And it's like, even going to different parts of the world, right? Because there's ancient wisdom. There's wisdom in the ground. There's wisdom in the earth. And, we can tap into that, like going to the desert, wherever it is that we go on our travels, like, can you tap into the nature and the medicine that is there for you to receive? And that's powerful. And being in nature, the more conscious we are in nature itself, the more that the power of nature will reveal itself to us. So when you're out and you see a bird, it's not just some random bird. The more you become in tuned and aware, the more you're going to notice that these things are not just coincidences, that you happen to find something, that this certain thing happened to happen at this moment. If you had this thought, of a hummingbird coming because you thought about someone who's passed on, and or something like that. Like, none of that is random. It's all just so perfectly orchestrated and synchronistic and in tuned with our own energy. But and it's happening all the time, whether we're in nature or just in life, it's happening all the time. We just have to be aware of what it is. We just have to open our eyes and see, because there's so many messages in the seen world. It's not just the unseen world, but it is also the seen world.
Something that came up, Teresa, when you said that is, when I'm there, not only am I super aware of the physicality of, even just touching the stones, but the land itself, the waters are more interesting. When you are in these places like the Nile River, I was in Australia and was in the Great Barrier Reef. And then I was just last year, as I know you love, Mount Shasta. The waters in these places have memories that bring things back. So I start collecting the waters, bringing the energy of the water back. And I keep moving the energy by bringing land from Egypt to Mount Shasta, Shasta to Egypt, or Chalice Well to Egypt, or Mount Shasta and Hawaii. And you start bringing the land and the water, and you start feeling the connection of the ley lines inside of you when you can literally tap. I do an energy exercise where I drop my anchor from my tailbone into the ley line wherever I am. Now, if that's a power source like Egypt or the Chalice Well, then obviously you're getting connected there. But what's interesting is no matter where you are on the planet, you can connect to those places, those energies and those remembrances, no matter where you are, because these inner roots of ley lines are so interconnected energetically.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. That's really powerful. Yeah. And I just had a thought about, because you mentioned Shasta, you mentioned the water. It's like drinking the water at Shasta, right? Like, that's really powerful. That whole vibration from the mountain and its spirit, is so healing in and of itself. Yeah. So, this kind of just reminds me of the last prompt question that I posted, which was, how does recognizing our connection to all forms of life contribute to personal and collective awakening? Like, because that's what we're talking about here, is our personal and collective awakening. Go ahead.
Your questions are really a lot to take in and try to process and answer for me right away. It takes me some time, just like, whoa, wait a minute. I feel like I'm back like I was when I first went to your first class and felt like, oh my God, what the fuck is she talking about? Anyway, I don't know if anybody else feels like that it's all a lot to process in the moment. Is it just me? Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
No, it's not just later. It's not just you.
Thank you.
They're deep. They're very deep.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it reminds
And that's
me.
good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Tracy. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. It's just that I can't come up with a quick,
No,
I
I don't
think
expect
this
anybody to.
makes me believe or think about when the earth started and the first people that started navigating the earth, which was a whole different earth than it is today because of the shifting of the lands and the waters. I think it's all intermixed, and we on the wind carries the energies from other places, and it goes all around the earth. And so I just feel like I'm just part of everything, all people, all earth. It just kind of flows through us. And that's our inheritance, I believe.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What I think, I read that book also. It's got to be 30 years ago I read it, at least. And what stood out to me, I didn't recognize the title. I remember The Mutant and Down Under, but when you started describing it, I thought, oh yeah. What stood out to me was the trust she had in everybody and these strangers that, yeah, took her clothes, burned them. And she stood there. They told her to stand straight. Does anybody remember this? And the ants were crawling on her and went in her ears and cleaned out the ears. And I thought, oh my God. And then after I read that, I thought, well, that had to feel really good when it was over. I mean, she really got cleaned out. And I would love to do that walk. I would love it. I've thought of it often. And what comes to mind, though, with your question, I'm rambling on here, how life comes back. I read that book over 30 years ago, and here I'm meeting all these people now that have read it, and you brought it up, and I've never met anybody else who ever read it, but think
Wow.
around.
That's
all,
cool.
all our experiences come back in some kind of a form.
Mm.
I'm finding that out.
Mm.
But
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a full circle.
yeah, yeah.
The interconnectedness of everything.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so we're coming up here on time at 7. So I want to just say this in conclusion, that aligning oh yeah, you're welcome. In conclusion, aligning with Mother Nature and recognizing the relevance of foundation is crucial. I mean, it's crucial for the collective awakening, by understanding like our roots and connecting with our roots and confronting our fears, walking the earth with intention, right? Healing our inner child wounds and cultivating like consciousness and power. In doing that, we can become conscious stewards of the planet and align with our true selves, and remembering that for ourselves, that that we are connected, we do come from the earth, and that connection is vital for us sustaining our life. And I thought about just kind of what's happening collectively for everything, for just in the world, and how things are being destroyed on the earth. And I reminded myself because I got caught in that, wow, what are we going to do to the earth? But I reminded myself that ultimately, and I don't mean to sound negative or anything like that, but ultimately we will destroy ourselves before we actually destroy the planet, so maybe I'll like think about that. Okay. It's really not the planet. It's us. It is us. And but having that reverence is really important. And another thing I want to leave you with is that, and this is what I was taught, that in going into nature is like going into someone's house. You don't just walk in, you walk in with reverence. You walk in with being grateful. You don't take unless you acknowledge and you leave something behind. And that's where the whole medicine bag concept that I learned came in. And I won't get into all of that right now, but just remembering that the reverence for all life, and that, we are stewards and we are guests here. We truly are. And I think that that's important, for us to just keep in the forefront of our mind. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything that they want to contribute as a closing? Nope, everybody good. All
I
right.
have just
Mhm.
See me?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just got the more of us that do this, that connect with the earth, connect our bodies with the earth, or heal and open, there'll be that number, like the 100th monkey, and then it'll just multiply. And I've even seen some stuff on I think it was 60 Minutes about this man that he knew how the ocean was being destroyed, and he created a whole refuge all over the world in different countries to protect the whales and the fish and the ocean in those areas. And so the ocean can heal itself too if we just take some, give it some help. And I think, more of us that do this work that you're talking about, it's going to happen, or we're going to destroy ourselves, too. One or the other.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave on this note, and Orion just posted something, and I love what he said. He said, "We walk in respect and humility," and this is the sentence that I think is really powerful. She will one day receive us back into herself. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and having a little bit of fun with talking about the earth. And the other thing is, I asked everybody to, when you filled out the question or the sign up, I asked, like, how do you connect with Mother Earth? And so I made a list of all of it, of what everybody's responses was, nobody's name, just all the responses. So I'm going to send that out because there were some really cool things that people said and comments. So I'll send that out to all of you so that, maybe you'll get some ideas from it. Okay. All right. Well, everybody have a great evening. It was fun to see everybody this evening.
Thank you, Teresa.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good
Bye.